So Salman Rushdie is an author who penned a book called The Satanic Verses, which was condemned amongst the Muslim world for its offensive depictions of Muhammad. Now, because of this, a fatwa was issued against him by the state of Iran, who put a multi-million dollar bounty on his head, which is scary, right? He was just penning a book, and now he's having a literal fucking state asking for his assassination and execution. Which again, that is an incredibly chilling effect on free speech. Don't think anybody would disagree with that prescription of free speech, because that's what free speech is, right? That is state power being used against you to try and silence you using whatever means that they have at their disposal, right? This is the real issue with free speech, is when states use their power to either try and imprison you, or in this state, kill you, which is bad. And what this has led to, with that bounty in place, there was an Islamic militant attacker who then, when stabbed him, and he was doing a book signing, and he was in a critical condition in hospital. Now, there is some good news, in that he may still be in a critical condition, but he is his usual and feisty self, and his defiant sense of humor remains intact, and is looking like his situation is somewhat improving, as this article states here, which is really good to see. There was a man, he's faced death threats for his novel for years, as it's been seen as blasphemous, and the man who was at Friday's attack as actually amazingly pleaded not guilty, even though there's just video footage of him stabbing Salman Rushdie in the neck. But I digress. But he's been taken off a ventilator. The family are extremely relieved, and there is hope on the horizon for him getting a little bit better in the future, which is good. This is all good stuff that we're hearing about his condition improving, and this is very similar to what we saw with the attacks on Charlie Hebdo. I forget exactly when that was, a few years ago, about them also facing militant action against them by Islamists because of perceived blasphemous activity around their depictions of the Prophet Muhammad, which again everyone condemned, as well they should, right? Now, this is a pretty unique incident about state power being used to try and silence someone from criticizing an idea, from essentially being silenced through threats of violence and threats of force from state power. This is terrifying, quite frankly. And again, he spent plenty of years in hiding because of this. And because of this, our favourite author on this channel, a little bit sarcastic, a one Miss J.K. Rowling tweeted out in support of him, as well she should, right, as 100%, she absolutely should tweet out in support of him with regards to what's happened. Then had another Islamist on Twitter respond, telling her that she would be next. And the police are investigating this online threat to her based upon her support for Salman Rushdie. As well they should, right? If this is a genuine threat to J.K. Rowling from some kind of Islamist militant, then unfortunately, that is bad, right? I'm not a fan of J.K. Rowling, but I have to defend her against, threats on her life from Islamic militants, or any militants, or anyone who makes death threats. Like, I shouldn't have to specify any groups that should or shouldn't do that, because nobody should do that shit, right? Now, she's been in the news pretty recently. She's been in the news quite a lot, because she's incredibly fucking transphobic, right? And people have been saying things about her on Twitter. People have been, disagreeing with such things on Twitter and calling her out, calling her transphobic, and this has been the reasonable criticism of her. In fact, people tweeted out so much stuff criticizing her specifically, including standing outside her mansion, which is on Wikipedia, where she claimed that she was being doxxed and having her free speech threatened by people tweeting mean things at her on the Bird app. The police investigated them and said there was nothing illegal there, because of course it wouldn't be. It's just people tweeting mean things at you. These aren't death threats or whatever. Because then all death threats that do happen, these should never ever be these should always rather be condemned. Yet people on Twitter seem to think that a government issued fatwa and public stabbing of somebody over their political opinions, or their own public works or whatever, is the same as J.K. Rowling being called transphobic on Twitter. I shit you not, right? These TERFs are fucking... They have brain disease. They're completely fucking stupid, right? Free speech today is under even more threat than 34 years ago, when the fatwa was declared against Rushdie. Today, the focal point of the anti-free speech grid is J.K. Rowling. If you condemned the fatwa, but don't full-throatedly condemn the attacks on her, you're part of the problem. I'm sorry. Someone being stabbed is not the same as some being having mean tweets, right? No one is threatening J.K. Rowling's free speech. She has a massive platform. She has millions of followers. She's a billionaire who lives in a fucking castle, right? She gets interviews. She gets all these different all this media attention. There is no one on this planet with less free speech than fucking J.K. Rowling, right? I'm sorry, but Salman Rushdie, the attack on him is absolutely heinous, right? It is not about you, TERFs. I'm sorry, it is absolute peak of TERF brain rot to compare what you principled opposition to the anti-trans positions that she is taking, right? On Twitter, on the Bird app, and comparing that to someone being stabbed because of a fatwa issued by a government body, right? This is just absolutely unthinkable. There's another one right here as well. If you're outraged by the depraved attack on Sir Salman Rushdie, but silent on the death threats against J.K. Rowling and other female writers, you're not a free speech champion that you think you are. There's no one who said that the death threats against these people are okay. You have concocted a fake enemy of people who think that death threats against J.K. Rowling and Julie Bindel are okay. Amusingly, no one cares about the death threats that trans people get, to be honest. Like, we get death threats for a living, right? Keffel's got fucking swatted. Because she had the gall to have a public platform where she protects trans people. And she's actually had guns pointed at her face, right? None of that shit happens to J.K. Rowling, right? But somehow, all these people seem to care about, billionaire castle wizard lady, then they care about trans women in Ontario literally having her house stormed by police. But that's a bit of a digression. But even so, regardless, right? Everybody gets death threats on the internet. I don't understand that's a flippant statement, right? But all death threats should be... I don't know anybody who thinks that death threats are okay, right? But it says something that the police have investigated what trans people have said about J.K. Rowling on Twitter, and they've said that nothing is big and nothing is worth a criminal conviction. So that should really be the end of that fucking conversation. But no, TERF has to make everything about themselves, right? They're absolutely mental, these people. Throughout the world, journalists who oppose states are jailed, citizens face death for political dissent. Our own government wants to remove the rights to protest and criticise the state. True, right? True. We have an authoritarian government right now who's trying to silence protests and silence any kind of political dissent, removing our ability to be able to criticise the government, actually mandating that people who criticise the government on their public profiles are getting expelled from the civil service, right? Like, frighteningly authoritarian. But no, the real issue, right, is trans people saying mean things about J.K. Rowling on the Bird app. This is just peak brainworms. Like, an Islamic militant threatening J.K. Rowling that's bad. Like, that's literally that comes from the same position, because she is then being essentially being fatwa'd by proxy because of her support for Rushdie. This is no way different to her using her massive platform to attack a minority group to try and get rid of their rights, and people then you saying things in response and calling her transphobic because she fucking is, right? She's had free reign to spout her nonsense opinions, and at no point has anybody ever made any credible threats of violence against her. No one's shown me any credible threats of violence against her in the same way that Salman Rushdie. It's just absolute nonsense. But whatever. Now, speaking of free speech as well, there's been another incident of someone's theoretical free speech being overridden by the woke mob. And this is the comedian Jerry Sadowitz. Apparently, Salman Rushdie getting stabbed because of the fatwa issued by the Iranian government. Apparently, this is the same as Jerry Sadowitz having his show cancelled at the Edinburgh Fringe. Because people were quote-unquote offended. I shit you not. These people think that a comedian not being able to do his show at a private institution, mind you, right? These are all fucking capitalists who believe that, private institutions should be able to do what they want, right? Whether because they think it might harm their brand value or whatever. That's their choice to make. Or what will drive their profits best. That's how free markets fucking work, mate. If you want the invisible hand of the free market, you fucking got it, right? That Jerry Sadowitz is the same as getting have a fatwa issued against him. This is just, I honestly look at this shit. Look at this shit. So, as Sir Salman Rushdie lies in hospital as punishment for supporting free speech in all its forms, the Edinburgh Fringe cancels Jerry Sadowitz's show in case someone is offended. Oh, honestly, we're fucking pathetic. It's not in case someone was offended, right? Do you know what actually happened? Do you know what actually happened? He called Rishi Sunak a peace slur, even though he's from fucking India originally, right? And he also thrust his penis at the crowd, which is crazy. It's absolutely crazy, right? Considering that one of the people who has come out in support of Jerry Sadowitz is Helen fucking Stannerland, the person who's pathologically obsessed with the idea that some mythical situation where a trans woman, where someone might see a trans woman's penis in some kind of changing area, despite the fact that I'm pretty sure literally every trans woman in the country will be absolutely fucking mortified and is trying at literally every possible opportunity to make sure that never fucking happens, right? Suddenly, Helen Stanland is now defending Jerry Sadowitz for getting his penis out and showing it to people non-consensually, and saying, "Oh, we shouldn't have this counted over this." Is it good for random people to see penises non-consensually or not? Up to you, Helen. Like, yeah, they're desperate to find oppression where none exists. And even Graham Linehan wrote a whole fucking article about this shit. Just as the coddled middle-class babies who work as staff at the Old Vic robbed London of Terry Gilliam's production of Into the Woods, now staff at the Pleasance Theatre have silenced one of Scotland's comedy legends, Jerry Sadowitz, because he refuses to bend the knee to men in wigs. This wasn't about trans people, Graham. Like, this man is absolutely fucking obsessed. It was literally about him being racist to Rishi Sunak. I can't believe I'm defending fucking Rishi Sunak, but there you go. And also for literally getting his fucking dick out. The thing that people like you and Helen Stanland say is like the overall worst thing that could possibly happen because of trans acceptance. Like, I'm sorry, but Salman Rushdie's plight against the fatwa issued by the Ayatollah is not the same as J.K. Rowling being called transphobic on the Bird app and Jerry Sadowitz having his show cancelled because the theatre that was showing it didn't want to be associated with a man who gets his dick out non-consensually in front of people, right? We all understand that dick pics are bad in our inboxes. Why should it be okay for him to do it non-consensually at a comedy club? I honestly have no idea, right? Like, and if I had a comedy club and I want to maximize my revenues, I don't think that I would want to be known as the places where you might see someone's dick non-consensually. Like, I'm sorry, it's just not. It's just complete nonsense. It's this, and anyway, it's not even censorship, right? It's not, the government aren't telling him he can't say what he can and can't say, right? This is a private institution not wanting to associate with another private individual because of the content of the thing that's going on, right? Like, literally, we've all seen fucking The Producers. We all know Springtime for Hitler, right? And how people, like, they couldn't even, it'd be difficult to find somewhere that you could put it on, advertise it, because people don't want to be associated with shit like this, right? Like, if your shop or your say your pub was the regular meeting place for the KKK, you'd tell them to fuck off, wouldn't you? Right? I'm sorry. I understand that's a pretty wild comparison, like Jerry Sadowitz and the KKK, but it's not exactly a wild comparison with J.K. Rowling, really, is it, at this point? But if you find that somebody might theoretically impact your profit margins because of the positions that they have, or because they might be, do something that would put people off coming in the future and cost you future revenues, you're going to do that. That is capitalism. Welcome to the economic system we live in. Fucking hell. Like, if Jerry Sadowitz or J.K. Rowling get stabbed because of their political opinions, by all means, I will be here calling it out. But unfortunately, as I've said many times here, having your show cancelled because your views do not align with the place that was previously holding it, and having people tweet things at you, calling you transphobic, is not the same as A, a fatwa, and B, being stabbed. I don't think that should be a controversial statement, but apparently it is in the year of our Lord 2022. So fucking hell, who knows what's going on. Anyway, if you enjoyed this segment, please do consider liking and subscribing. Please do go down into the comments and tell me how I'm a triggered Tim, AGP, who hasn't seen the fact that some random trans woman on Twitter, made a meme where Killy Chassis might have got firebombed. You can call me a triggered snowflake if you want as well, if you're a Jerry Sadowitz fan coming into my comment section. I don't mind. You do make all those comments that you want calling me a triggered libcuck. That only helps the algorithm, as far as I'm concerned, so feel free. Keep it going. Anyway, if you did enjoy it though, please like and subscribe. If you click the bell, it'll give you a notification when I go live in future, and also follow me on my socials there. Thank you very much, and I'll catch you on the next one.